Right, we now come to Hud, and that chapter opens with a statement about the Quran, which is in verses 1 to 2. Which starts with Alif Lam Ra. Again, it's an Alif Lam Ra chapter. Kitabun uhkimat ayatuhu thumma fusilat min ladun hakimin kabir. So a book, its verses are made evident, and it is further explained in detail from the nearness of the one who is full of judgment or judicious and well acquainted. Then the Quran itself speaks. So this is perhaps the abbreviated essence of the Quran, and which says Allah ta'budu illallah innani lakum minhu nadhirun wa bashir. So the Quran is now saying that you should not worship other than Allah, and I am to you a warner and one who gives good news. And then the Quran continues to talk until verse 6 or verse 7. I'm not entirely sure which verse it is yet. But for this short passage, it is the Quran's voice which is coming. So perhaps we could take this as the Quran essentializing its message. Then it continues up till verse 25, which starts with the sequential narrative of Nuh. Nuh goes on to from verse 25 to verse 49, which talks about again the worship of Allah. Allah ta'budu illallah, do not worship other than Allah, and it talks about averting destruction. So while in chapter 10 Nuh is given like 3 or 4 verses, in chapter 11 it's over 20 verses, almost 25 verses. So here we can see the system of Nuh being enacted. How does the system of Nuh figure into the theme of this chapter? Let's see. Then we go on to verse 61 to 68, which talks about Saleh. Before that, verse 50 to 59, which talks about the people of Hud, again to worship Allah, and there is a conversation going on between Hud and his people. Next, verse 61 to 68, which talks about Saleh and the people of Thamud. Again, the same thing is taking place here, and the she-camel of Saleh needs to be read metaphorically. What does this metaphorically symbolize? So before we continue, it says Nuh, Saleh, and Nuh, Hud, and Saleh are now again coming together in a single chapter. The previous time we saw this was in chapter 7. So it would do us some good, I think, to actually compare the rhetorics given here and see chapter 11 as perhaps an elaboration or an alternative version of chapter 7. Next comes the story of Ibrahim and Lut, moments before the destruction of the people of Lut. Then comes the story of Shu'aib. Again, Shu'aib talks to his people about their malpractices before his people reject him and face destruction. Next comes the story of Musa. Very interestingly here, Musa is mentioned with Al-Kitab. Al-Kitab here, we can see that when Musa is mentioned with Al-Kitab, which we've seen in chapter 6, the next verse is usually about the Quran. So it's a comparable situation with those who bring the Quran forward as opposed to just signs. Yeah. And again, the people reject Musa, and again they face destruction. So this chapter then sums up everything from verse 113, which talks about not inclining to those who do wrong. So here, after mentioning all these personalities, it goes back to the reader's struggle. The reader is now being told, do not incline to those who do wrong. Now see what comes after this. Verse 114 to 115. Establish salat. So salat here is to firmly bond oneself with the message, or perhaps with the cause, or with Allah, and do not falter from this. That's verse 115, which talks about being steadfast, sabr, asbir. Yeah, and again here the word akim, establish, is in singular. So chapter 10 and chapter 11 seem to be focused on the singular person, the reader, how the reader takes it upon himself to bring the message and reform the world. And we can see that when he does so and he's rejected, obviously he has to be doing it sincerely and everything. If he does so and he is rejected, what happens is the destruction of that community. Then the chapter ends with verse 120 to 123, which talks about the stories. God says that the stories are narrated or related on you to strengthen you. So these concepts, these stories, their ideas are there to strengthen our minds and understand exactly what is the human condition. What does it mean when we bring forward the message? So that brings us to the end of chapters 10 to 11. I apologize once again for the brevity of this presentation, but once again we're following a Ramadan course, and we hope that after Ramadan, inshallah, we will focus more on these chapters. So there you go, the chapter twins. Try to read them together and compare where they abbreviate and where they elaborate. That way you can see how the stories relate on from the point of view of Yunus and the point of view of chapter Hud. Thank you very much again for your viewership. Bye.